Premier Nissan, where you get the premier deal on the premier vehicles in the entire New Orleans area. Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. Come on out and join us, as you'll have an opportunity to get one of the best vehicles at one of the best prices you can possibly imagine through Premier at Premier Nissan. And a pleasant good evening to you. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Premier Nissan, hits you right squarely in the jaws. We come at you with all full force, and we'll do it with our guys here that we'll introduce to you to talk about the Super Bowl, talk about the Pelicans, to talk about any number of topics here today, including what happens next year in the NFL. First and foremost, Torrance Small, former New Orleans Saint and NFL wide receiver. Torrance, good evening to you.
Hey, how we doing, Ken? Were you just disappointed, or just a disappointing this weekend? Very disappointing. I mean, I was just disappointed. I thought they'd have better commercials than what they have. Oh, and also the game wasn't that good either.
All righty then.
I like that. That's good.
You would.
Yeah.
Brian Allee-Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. I hope you're more creative. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Dr. Trahan, and to our esteemed panel, as always. Two quick thoughts. One is, I felt, and it only confirmed what we saw Sunday at East Rutherford, was we saw the real NFL championship in the NFC championship when Seattle played San Francisco. And two, for weeks, even months, we've been hearing about the elements going to play a big role in the game. Well, you know what? Two things didn't develop over the weekend. One, the weather was as tropical as you'd ever want in a February the 2nd in New York. And two, the game never developed. There was no game. There was no competition.
Rickey Jackson, Pro Football Hall of Famer, who got some additional members of that fraternity this past weekend, including a New Orleanian, Ananias Williams, joining us. And Rickey, good evening to you.
All right, good evening, Ken. I'll tell you what, man, I got some great guys winning this weekend, and I'm just still waiting on Martin Anderson to get in. But it was always good to see the commissioner sitting in the stands, because so many people complain about, having it up north and having it in east like that. And he showed everybody that, he's down with the fans. He's got in the stands, and it was great to see him in the stand. And it's always great to see the Pelicans getting on the right track, too. So we got some positive, even though the Denver lost. Seattle never won it before. It's always good, man, to have the NFL and have the first team to win it. Same like the Saints. It's good for football.
When we return in just a moment, we will take a look at Super Bowl highlights, what few there were for Denver and the many there were for Seattle, as sportsNOLAtv continues from Premier Nissan on Veterans Boulevard in Metairie on WHNO. Pretty interesting stat there. At least Saints fans can take solace in the fact that they got knocked out by the best. And we knew that Seattle was the best. We knew they were the best all season long, and they upheld that in the playoffs, and they upheld it in convincing fashion in the Super Bowl in New Jersey. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, Premier Nissan in Metairie. Time now to break down this one-sided Super Bowl contest, which wasn't much of a contest. And Brian, as you start things off, when you start the way Denver did, you kind of had the feeling right away, at least I did, that this is the way this thing is going to go. Did you feel that way as well?
Yeah, somebody made a really, I thought, an astute observation during all the 2 weeks leading up to the game, Kenny, about you're going to know whether or not Denver is going to have some success against Seattle's defense in the first two series. Now, granted, it was a bad snap, but move to the second series. They didn't move the ball either there. You just had a feeling, Kenny, like you said, that they were going to struggle moving the ball. And what I liked what Seattle did is they didn't do they played more zone. Even Pete Carroll admitted to that. They played more zone than they have in the past. But generally, they challenged the receivers, and they said, you're going to have to beat us the way we play football. And they didn't. They couldn't do it.
Yes, they played zone, but they were up. They gave you the illusion they were playing man.
Yeah.
They were playing zone, and those guys were staying in contact with those receivers to about 5 yards. Then they were releasing, and they was looking for somebody else to come in their zone, and they were picking up. And man, when I say picking up, they were hitting. They had Tiberius. He was a little timid going across the middle if you saw him. Every time he caught the ball, instead of just getting up the field, he was trying to get to the outside too much instead of getting up the field. And that hurt their offense because they weren't getting positive yards, and that put them in a hole. And the front for Seattle was just pushing. They were in pain face the whole game, and the receivers, they had problems. I saw in the game, for the most part, the receivers were complaining way too much about holding. They said in the history of the game, not the history of the game, but the last 10 Super Bowls, they only had about 6 holding calls on defensive backs. That you're not going to get that call. Not in this game. It's not a time to complain. It's a time to stand up. And I think they were complaining way too much in this game.
All right, so it starts the way it does, Ricky, and Manny Ramirez takes the blame after the game on that snap that wasn't. What did you see, or what did you think you saw? We don't know unless they actually tell you the truth, but what did you think occurred there on that play?
Well, I mean, you know, looked like to me everybody was moving. They already had a game plan at what was going to happen, and you see everybody was moving before, you know, they know that the play was called. And when Peyton went up to talk to him, once they heard Peyton say something, everybody moved to what they was going to do, and he snapped the ball. But, you know, you're always going to protect the quarterback. You know, one thing about the players, they're going to protect each other, so you probably never know what happened in the situation. But my whole thing was looking at the game, just like I said last week, the special team going to make a difference. Everybody looking at the game see that Seattle special team went down, and they really hit Denver players a lot harder than Denver players hit them. They look a lot quicker. I mean, when Denver guys get the ball in the end zone, those guys look like they was running by. I thought those guys was offside. They was getting out there so fast. And there was a lot of them shooting by Denver guys. So it made a big difference. Then when Denver guy get the ball, he runs all the way. You never, Seattle guy, you never see Denver guys really show up that much. So you can see the difference. The intents was different. Seattle had way more intents on offense, defense, and every trip, Wilson threw inside slants real quick. He got the ball out of his hands. Denver played zone, outside zone, and gave them the slants, and that was his best throw. So Denver had a bad game plan. Seattle had a lot better game plan. Seattle defense, the defensive backs was a whole lot better. You can see Denver got weaker defensive back. That's what Denver got to tighten up on next year. They got to get them some cover guys, some good defensive back, and that wasn't different in the ball game. Seattle was just better team.
I agree with you on all fronts with what you just said. Very good analysis. And Ricky, also they created pressure, Seattle did, without having a blitz. They couldn't block Averill, and they couldn't block Clemens, and those guys were in Manning's face all day.
Well, they know where Peyton was going to be at. You know, I mean, you can see the difference out of Wilson. Wilson ran around and made extra time and bought time for himself, and that's what the game get to. The game get to where a quarterback need to move now, because anything, if you let these pro coaches know where a guy going to be at all the time, they're going to figure out a way to get to him. So you got to have it where now a guy got to be where he can move around and get away from some things. Some things you can't coach, and Wilson showed you that yesterday. Man, they had him a couple times, 91 on the other side. He breaks down and come underneath. Wilson go around and get 10 yards. That's the kind of stuff a quarterback got to be able to do. I mean, if you just go back there, and I know I got 4 guys going to hold you in and you're not going to run, you can see what Seattle did yesterday to Peyton yesterday.
Brian, I got suckered into thinking this was going to be a close game. I picked Seattle to win by 3, but I was way off on that front. Some people picked Denver to win, and the odds makers had Denver as the early favorite, and the bettors bet that up. How does that happen when you look at the disparity between the two teams?
Well, you looked at a Denver offense that had set an NFL record with 606 points during the regular season. And guys, we have seen how good that Seattle defense is. I don't think we should be fooled by that defense, but we all thought that Denver would be able to create some kind of an offensive game plan, and they realized, you know, how many times did Seattle's defensive linemen run down their backs who were set up in a screen element, and they ran them down. Their front seven just dominated the line of scrimmage. Seattle's defense should be mentioned with some of the best defenses in the NFL.
I think they're the best since the Bears in
They
85.
really are.
I think they're better than the Ravens were in 2001. Let's take a look at some stats from this game. Statistics don't always tell the story, and you look at some of the numbers here, and there was some equity in total yardage, which is misleading. Third down conversions, both teams were pretty good. Time of possession pretty close, but Torrance, the number that matters, is the 4th line there. Turnovers, 4 turnovers, none for the opposition. That signifies a potential blowout. That's what you got.
Well, playing Seattle, let's just look. Throw the stats out, and you just look at the energy level these guys played with.
Yeah.
You look at the passion these guys played with. everybody was a step faster than the guy that was across from them. Bar none. You saw that it was clear. It was clear that they were faster and they were more aggressive. When they hit, they wrapped up. We saw in the highlights earlier, when Denver hit, they did not wrap up. The player did not go down. Whenever Denver caught the ball, those guys went down.
Ricky, kicking off to start the second half. Too much respect for Percy Harvin. Why would you kick short like that? You got Matt Prater, who's kicked the ball through the end zone the entire season. I guess you don't think he can't do it in that situation? You don't think he can do it in that situation? Maybe because he's not at altitude? I mean, why?
I mean, this is the fastest guy on the field. I mean, not just on your team, on the whole field. And then you give him an open like that. I mean, and once he seen the floodgate open, he was going in. I mean, all he had to do was make one or two guys miss, and it was a touchdown. I can understand. I'd rather for you to kick it out of bounds and let him start on the 35, man, than let him just, have a clear shot at the kicking team like that. But I thought the whole game plan was, Seattle, like Terrence says, Seattle was way more aggressive in this game, and that's what you've seen from, I thought maybe they was a dorm team that they couldn't play outdoors, but they showed me yesterday that they was the better defensive team, they was the more hungry team, and their coach made a big difference. Pete Carroll called a great game.
Well, I thought they were better prepared, and I thought they called a good game. I agree with you there, too. Let's take a look at a list of defensive most valuable players in the history of the Super Bowl, because you had another one here in Malcolm Smith. And you look at the others over the years. Chuck Howley, the only MVP for a losing team, Brian. Jake Scott, of course, a great safety. Harvey Martin, Randy White, both on that same defensive line. Richard Dent, that 85 Bears team. Larry Brown had the big pick six in that game against, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ray Lewis, of course. Dexter Jackson in a totally one-sided game, and now Malcolm Smith. If you're going to be the MVP on defense, you have to have accomplished a lot. Malcolm Smith did so.
And Malcolm Smith wasn't invited to the combine as a senior, 7th round draft pick, wasn't a starter. Here's a guy that all he did, and he has made plays really the latter part of the season. He made, the interception that clinched the victory. Now, he didn't, it was a Richard Sherman deflection, but he made that interception in the end zone against San Francisco. I think he had 3 or 4 interceptions at the end of the season. This guy is just one of those no-name guys. They didn't even give him a podium last week at East Rutherford. He had to, he was out in the mingling in the audience in the stands and stuff. So, and he was deserving. Now, I know Ricky had talked. He didn't think that he could have given it to Russell Wilson the MVP award.
Could have, but I just thought their defense, somebody on their defense deserved
it. I mean, it's always good to see a defensive guy get it anyway. I'm a defensive guy. So you always want a defensive guy to get it. But I'll tell you what, man, that guy said he woke up that morning before the game dancing and shouting and having a lot of fun. So he got something, a great reward that he can remember the rest of his life.
He got a truck.
They got a truck. That's right. And he's going to Disney. And he's going to Disney World. All right.
Yeah, a couple of things.
Okay. So, moral to the story, blowouts in the Super Bowl. If you want to avoid a blowout, you might want to avoid having the Denver Broncos as part of the Super Bowl. Because when you look at the blowouts over the years, the Broncos were involved in 3 of those. And when you look at the Broncos' 5 losses in the Super Bowls, they've come by an average margin of about 29 points. Torrance, it's remarkable. Of course, they won 2 with John Elway at the end of his career, but those first 2 games, of course, were in New Orleans in the Superdome, the 49ers crushing the Broncos and the Bears destroying the Patriots. So this was unfortunate. As you mentioned in the open, just unfortunate, because no matter who wins, you want to see a good game.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing. We want to see a good game. You want to see a good game, then good commercials. Well, we didn't get the commercials, we didn't get the game. And it was very disappointing for them to come out and just not put, it's as they didn't put forth effort, as they didn't rehearse. Did they practice? What were they thinking? We don't know. But it was clear that Seattle was ready. They were well coached. They played fast. They didn't have to think. They knew what was going on, and they react. And they react fast and aggressive.
Ricky, defensive backs for Seattle are simply better than the Denver wide receivers, and that's saying a lot because Denver's got good receivers.
Well, I mean, Denver got good receivers, but those guys quit. I mean, I've seen a lot of those guys, they didn't want to get hit. Some of the hitting that Seattle was doing, Denver players should have turned up field and trying to get first down and stuff. Those guys were still going sideways. I mean, they never did turn up and play like that. Wes Walker, he fought hard, but some of the other guys, they didn't come to play. They was more afraid of the licks.
And I agree with you again. Welker's the only guy that really turned up the field and tried to do something with the ball when he caught it. And he's the littlest guy out there.
Russell stayed lateral. I mean, they just kept going south. I mean, they never did turn up, you know, like I was looking for them to do. So, I mean, I couldn't understand that.
Yep.
But the licks was hard. I mean, Marino quit. I can see after the first quarter, Marino didn't want to play no more. He got hit one good time. The next time he fumbled the ball, but he was finished. He didn't want to play. They
need better running backs in Denver anyway. We'll take a time out here. When we return in just a moment, we'll turn our attention to the New Orleans Saints as sportsNOLAtv continues from Premier Nissan, 6636 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie, right here on WHNO. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. Now, Lenny's done good this week. On Sunday, the Seahawks became the 7th team in Super Bowl history to score over 40 points. All 7 of those, ironically, have been NFC teams. What AFC team scored the most points in a Super Bowl? Ponder it. Keep in mind, none of them scored 40, but one AFC team did score a pretty high number, and they rank as our trivia answer for sportsNOLA.com this evening. We'll give you the answer coming up. I think somebody knows it on the panel. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLA TV, Premier Nissan, Premier Dealership, Troy Duhon and Company doing a tremendous job of providing you with outstanding choices, and Nissan certainly does that. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on in the show. Right now, let's talk about the drive that is the New Orleans Saints and how that vehicle is going to be operated moving forward. This was a good football team in 2013, and I think Saints fans understand that now after watching what Seattle did to Denver. Brian, as you look at this Saints team, this is a league of copycats. It's a league of follow the leader, if you will, and do what you have to do to beat the best. So the Saints now know they're going to have to beat Seattle and San Francisco if they want to win the NFC. Therefore, what do you think the Saints have to do most of all to catch those teams in the grand scheme of things?
Well, if you want to build a model after Seattle, you want to go get bigger, more physical, and faster DBs. And then you also want to get receivers in general, and I'm including the tight end here, that are much more tough-minded and much more physical and faster.
Well, I think you need to go get offensive linemen. If you look at Seattle and you look at the 49ers, they front are coming. If you're going to protect Drew Brees, you better have somebody there to block. And I think we struggled this year in the offensive line, and we need to definitely get a tackle, a right tackle, and a left tackle right now to help out in that situation there.
I mean, you know, team, you always can look at what the special team did too, Terrence. I mean, just like for us, the guy can get back there and bring the ball back. I like Stroll. Stroll's just a guy can catch the ball. You need some elusive guys back there can make guys miss and hit a home run with the return. And I mean, you know, you got to look at that phase of the game too. And then you got to look at the defensive backs too. I mean, you want to get some guys that can cover and some guys are going to knock a guy's head off. And that's what Seattle got. Seattle got some guys going to bring the wood and they're going to cover. And that's what you're looking for. Plus the guys up front, I mean, you know, they did a great job this year, but you always can use 1 or 2 more big young guys.
Well, I tell you, it sounds like we need to rebuild the whole team. I was going to say, I think we could get another linebacker as well.
There you go.
So, you know, so we have rebuilt the whole team.
I think we need all those things, but the number one thing I think, Press, I think we need a offensive lineman or a defensive back. Depending on who's out there and available for us when we get our pick.
But you need more than one guy. I mean,
you
need about 3 or 4 off and on. See, one thing about football these days, I mean, so many guys getting hurt, just like Denver. A lot of those guys who on Denver team, they weren't there when they started the season off. So all the guys got hurt. Same thing with the Saints. I mean, had so many guys get hurt. Vanna, Will Smith, all those guys get hurt. You got new guys replacing. So you got to get some good young players who can run and got speed and going to hit.
First pick. Who should we get this year? Who should the Saints get this year? First pick.
Best player on the board, man. Best player available. I mean, there's too many. You just established the fact that you have 3 or 4 specific needs. Therefore, you pick the best player available on the board. Do you need another cornerback? Absolutely. Do you need another receiver that can make plays? Surely. Do you need an offensive lineman? Absolutely. Could you use a running back that can make plays? Definitely. You pick the best player available on the board. Speaking of best players, Aeneas Williams was one of the best players in NFL history at his position. And the New Orleanian out of Fort Shea High School is joining Rickey in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, deservingly so. He nearly got in last year. He gets in this time around. I was part of his induction into the Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame. He's a terrific young man. And I was fortunate to do some of his high school games on television, and I still have a couple of those, by the way. He was awfully good, and the numbers speak for themselves. 14 seasons, 55 interceptions, 23 fumble recoveries, a turnover machine, 13 touchdowns, Pro Bowls, All-Pro honoree. And Rickey, you would know more than anybody. You're in that fraternity. This young man is deserving.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to see him. I mean, I've been with him a lot of years, man. I've always been waiting on him to make it. Everybody knew that he was going to make it. It's just a matter of time. And, I mean, he was just like me. You know, it had a period to go through. He had so many guys. And a lot of times, you know, at least he made it. He didn't have to wait till the senior committee. So I take my hats off to you, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play against Aeneas in college when he was at Southern, played against Alcorn State, deep Alcorn State. And great guy back then, great when he was in the league. A lot of people ask me who was the toughest defensive back I had to go against, and I always say Aeneas Williams. He was a guy that played bump and run. He was very smart. He definitely read the routes and everything. Great player, happy for him.
And Brian Morton Anderson didn't get in, maybe next year.
Yeah, you know what? It could be a little longer haul. I thought he might even make it to the final 10 this year. He didn't. So yeah, he'll be in one day, like Rickey said. Maybe not now, but hopefully soon.
Maybe like Ray Guy, he'll have to be Job in terms of patience, but he's very deserving, and one day he'll get there. When we return in just a moment, who's the team to beat in the NFL in 2014? Back on our hot seat to discuss that in a moment here on WHNO. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening surrounds points scored in Super Bowls. What AFC team scored the most points in a Super Bowl? Can you think black and silver? The Los Angeles Raiders, 38 against Washington in Super Bowl 23, 38-9, I believe was the score. Joe Theismann and the Redskins got humbled, got pummeled, got beat badly. Marcus Allen had a ridiculous game, and I'm showing my age, and that was the correct answer. So you may have gotten it. I hope you did, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLA TV from Premier Nissan in Metairie on Veterans Boulevard. And it's time now for our hot seat segment where we put Brian Allee-Walsh on the hot seat and make an absolute fool out of him by embarrassing him with our answers after he's given you his repertoire of reasons as to why he's wrong. And this week's subject, which he'll be wrong about, surrounds the team to beat in the NFL in 2014. Who is the team to beat in 2014 in the NFL? Is it the Seahawks or someone else? Who's the early favorite? Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan. I think the LA Raiders are going to come out. No, just kidding.
You would.
I mean, look, this to me is a no-brainer here. I think the two best teams will continue to be the two best teams next year, and there's not one of them that's in the AFC, in my opinion. It's Seattle and San Francisco. And I think the Saints are they're closing the gap, but they're still number 3 in the NFC. I think it's those two teams. Out of the AFC, you've got your standbys again. Denver will be there. Peyton will be back likely. Tom Brady's going to be around again. If San Diego continues its fold, those things. But the two best teams are going to continue to be the two best teams in the NFL. Do you hear the word dynasty? If Seattle can keep its core together, and that's a big if, but John Snyder's a hell of a GM, and Pete Carroll's proven he's a great coach. If they can keep their core together, okay, they're going to be around for a few more years. Russell Wilson is his second year, and I'm telling you, that's a dynastic team.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here.
All right.
Go way out on the limb, and I'm going to say Seattle. I'm going to say Seattle. Reason being, defense, bar none, best in the league. And they had one of their top corners that wasn't here because of he got suspended.
Right, Brown.
So wait for this guy to come back. But not only that, but you're going to have a healthy Percy Harvard coming back. You're going to have a Sidney Rice that's going to be able to come back. So now they're going to have more firepower on that offense where they'll be able to score more points because they struggled a little bit at times during the season scoring some points. They relied a lot on their defense. But now you're going to have the #1 defense with a coming up offense and Russell Wilson fresh off a Super Bowl win. I just think this team, like you said, I can see a little New England. I'm not going to say dynasty. I'll say a little New England in them if they could keep everything tied in together. But they will be challenged by San Francisco. They will be challenged by Denver. They will be challenged by New England. Those teams, I think, will still be up top. And the Saints, depending on how we get this offensive line, if we can get a corner, get a few pieces in here, I think we'll also be a threat as well.
Well, I mean, you're looking at it, and I can say, man, the Carolina Panthers, they weren't that far away. Their quarterback play a little better, man. They got a great team. I mean, they got a great defense, great defensive lineman. They look real good on defense. But it's just, like you say, the quarterback making a big difference a lot on these teams. And the quarterback with Carolina, if he was smart like Wilson, Carolina would have probably been in that situation. So it's just going to come to a play here, play there with guys being smart enough to take their team. The Saints got a great team. They got to get their secondary together to get more like Seattle secondary, and I think that we got a good chance with them. Plus, if we win, getting home field advantage, that's going to make the difference with the Saints getting home field advantage.
Yeah, now that's a big point right there. You have to win the home games. Saints did very well at winning the home field. We win at home. We just have to learn to win on the road. Seattle wins at home. They struggle a little bit on the road, but they win on the road, and that is going to be the difference.
Well, it's still a quarterback-driven league, and the teams that we've just talked about all have outstanding quarterbacks for the most part. Cam Newton, I was in Cam's corner until that divisional game, and he reverted to me as the old Cam Newton I remember. But that's a good club to watch. I agree with you, Ricky. But you know what? If they can, and there's that Super Bowl hangover that you've got to be concerned about, I think, a little bit. But that's a young, eager team with a good, he's 62 years old, Pete Carroll.
Yes.
Okay, but he's got as much energy as, he's full of energy.
Full of energy, and the players play with energy.
Coach Pete Carroll coached me at San Francisco, and I know he was a player coach. Everybody want to play for him. Anytime you got a coach that you want to play for, I mean, you got Ken Norton over there with him. All those players are going to love Ken Norton. He's just like he's still playing the game today. And they're going to teach those guys what they need to do. So they got a great nucleus over there, got a great young coach. And he got a lot of guys around him that is good football players and got good football knowledge.
Yeah, the guys, they play like their coaches. Fun, exciting, passion, and that's the way Seattle plays. You saw it in the Super Bowl. It was fun, it was exciting, it was passion, they was hitting, they was excited, they get excited for each other. Sherman, of course, he said some things about himself being the best player out there. He is. But his players, his teammates, they know him. They're excited for him. They're excited for him being the #1 corner. They're not sad about that. They're excited for him. And that's the way they play. Pete Carroll shows that when he's on the sideline. They exemplify that in practice, and they also show it in the game as well.
All right. You guys, you've made some very lucid arguments. I'm very impressed with the depth to which you've come up with some information that is somewhat pertinent and maybe some things that have been left out. It's very obvious that the Seattle Seahawks are the team to beat moving forward, and those reasons were alliterated very well. First of all, they're young. Youngest Super Bowl winning team ever, tied for the first youngest ever. Secondly, they were missing very important pieces at wide receiver. They don't need Browner, by the way, but offensively, they get a boost from the guys coming back, Harvin on a full-time basis, Rice coming back, and obviously that makes a big difference. Golden Tate to go along with Baldwin, who gets bumped back, but still has the ability to play. San Francisco, in my mind, is the one team that could get them because Kaepernick is a year older, and they still have a great defense, and they can run the football to a degree. Carolina's legit. They can play, and the Saints are legit with a couple of moves in the offseason that matter. They can be right there and have a chance. As for the AFC, the one team that you guys haven't pointed out at all that I absolutely will point out as a team to beat, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are the team to beat next year, the Indianapolis Colts. They're the only team to beat the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Denver Broncos this past year. This is a team that was able to beat those teams head-to-head in various ways, I might add. And oh, by the way, Luck played very well against Seattle, and they scored 34 points in that football game. You give him another weapon outside of T.Y. Hilton. Can Reggie Wayne come back? If they draft well, they are absolutely the team that will ascend in the AFC, a weak conference. As for the NFC, keep an eye on a couple of other teams. If Detroit gets their coaching situation stabilized, I think they have the talent to step forward. Philadelphia, a year later with Nick Foles, obviously has a chance to step forward and be a better football team as well. But at this point in time, how can you go against Seattle? Unless you're picking San Francisco. And if you do, then it's okay, and I get it. And the Saints, they're in the mix. They have a shot. We'll take a time out here. When we return, we'll have a discussion about the Pelicans, among other things, as we continue with Sports NOLA TV from Premier Nissan in Metairie on WHNO Channel 20. National Signing Day, high school, college football merging one into the other on Wednesday. And of course, we'll have full coverage at sportsNOLA.com from all around the metropolitan area. We'll be at about 12 different places with interviews with all the top recruits in the area. And you'll want to get it all at sportsNOLA.com, where you can find that kind of information all the time. Ken Trahan from Premier Nissan, 6636 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie, where we originate from this evening. And the New Orleans Pelicans have been originating a few wins of late. They won 4 or 5 games, playing better basketball overall, despite being depleted by injuries. And you have to be impressed with the way they performed 2-1 last week. Wins at Cleveland and at home against Chicago. Anthony Davis not chosen for the All-Star team, despite the fact that he's been great of late. He's had 21 blocks in his last 3 games. And again, the homestand continues tonight with San Antonio coming up shortly. Wednesday night, the Atlanta Hawks are in town. Then Friday night, a national television game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, Brian, as you check out the Pelicans and what's happening at this point, you have to be pleased with the effort they're showing. You have to be very pleased with the way Anthony Davis is playing.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, there's still a shot that Anthony Davis could make it as a reserve. If Kobe Bryant's not going to play, that spot's going to be open. Chris Paul may not play, that spot might be open. Anthony Davis, he's got a double-double. As Kenny said, he's going for his 7th consecutive game with at least 4 blocks. This guy is making people think of Alcindor, all those kind of big-time centers back in the day. 20 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 3.5 blocks a game. This guy deserves to be in New Orleans on the All-Star team.
Well, he's protecting the rim, and a lot of evidence of that. They out-toughed the Bulls, again, swatting shots away, impacting shots continuously. And this team's played better defense most recently, and he's a large reason why, Torrance. And, of course, offensively, get to the rim. That's the way to go.
Yes, Monty Williams, he's a defensive-minded coach, and that's something Anthony Davis is bringing to the team, giving us a defensive presence. And offensively, this guy's he's much more aggressive. He's definitely has been working on this game, and as the season goes on, the better he's getting.
Ricky, we know how good Davis has played, and he took it to Noah, who's a terrific defensive player in this game. But their guard play's been a little bit better of late, too. Brian Roberts has stepped up. Austin Rivers has stepped up and played better. Eric Gordon's played in more games than any other Pelican this year, surprisingly. Again, Anthony Davis's length on defense. But when you're given the opportunity to play because of injuries, you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of it. But the Pelicans, the only thing they're missing is probably a good forward. I mean, they need another big guy with Davis, power forward that really, who can rebound and shoot the ball well from the outside. And I think they're pretty good, because their guards playing pretty good, the center playing good, and the small forward playing good. Maybe they need just one more big guy to help them out down the stretch.
Well, they've reached an agreement, at least reportedly, with a guy, Luke Babbitt, a stretch 4, they call him, a guy that played on a team in Russia, played a couple of 3 years with Portland. He's supposed to be a 3-pointer. He's supposed to be the Ryan Anderson, maybe a replacement, because that's his strength. He's a good perimeter shooter. But these guys are Band-Aids. They're just trying to get through a season right now. 20 wins, I'm gonna readjust my thinking. This club could win 32-33 if they continue this momentum.
And I mean, they got the big boy Bynum who went to Indianapolis. I don't see him playing a lot there. I thought maybe he should have seen a young team like here and tried to come with us. And I mean, they could have moved Davis to the power forward and used him. But I mean, you know, that didn't happen. But that's what I was hoping would have happened. But they just need another big man.
That was a surprise to me because Roy Hibbert's there.
Yeah.
He's not going to get a lot of minutes. It would seem to me he would have been better served somewhere else. Torrance?
Oh, definitely that. I was with Rick. I think we need a big guy, and I thought Bynum would have made a great fit here, but he chose to go to the Pacers. We wish him the best, but hopefully we can, you know, we're doing a nice little patch job, and that's something that Monty Williams been doing great since he's been here for the most part.
Yeah, but
And Brian, you might not want to mess with a guy like that with the way he's behaved over the past few years.
I agree, Kenny. And you know what? If I'm Andrew Bynum, I'm still thinking, look, I got a shot to win it all with Indiana. Yeah. Okay, you go up there and mind your P's and Q's, and they feel they've got the locker room that they can handle a guy like he's making $1 million in addition to all the other money he's commanded. I think it's a good move for Indiana now. I don't know about for him, but I think it's a good move for Indiana. All he's got to do is come in and play 7-10 minutes a game and contribute off the bench, and they
get healthy.
And stay healthy.
It gets him healthy. It gets him
have
healthy.
a lot invested in him. So if he get there and try to be a
they can
bad
get
apple,
right.
they can get rid of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All-star game coming, Brian. Looking forward to the experience, and we should have a name for that building too shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think?
You know, watch social media. You got some ideas out there that are probably pretty accurate. So
Yes,
stay
I
tuned.
think you're right. Yeah.
Brian, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank
Always
you
a
for being
pleasure,
with
too.
us. Brian Allee-Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. When we return, we'll tell you a little bit about Premier Nissan as we continue with sportsNOLA TV in Metairie on WHNO Channel 20. Premier Nissan of Metairie at 6636 Veterans Boulevard. Go to premiernissan.net for more information. In here, you'll find truly exceptional deals and customer service second to none, and a proven product over a long period of time at premier prices at Premier Nissan of Metairie. TGI Fridays, 2 locations, Metairie on Veterans, across the river on Manhattan. Get out to TGI Fridays, great lunch specials, great place, watch football. And TGI Fridays, it's always Friday. Don't forget Prep Recruiting Insider Special Edition, National Signing Day this coming Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. with Renee Nato and Ro Brown with a recap with videos of some of the most prominent recruits in the area. That's PRI. You won't want to miss it. Ken Trahan at Premier Nissan, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the show Byron Lopez, the finance manager of Premier Nissan. Byron, good to have you with us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first and foremost, I talked about being truly exceptional and great deals, and you've also got that promise that you guys provide, the customer promise, to ensure good deals.
Absolutely.
Talk about that briefly.
Well, we basically guarantee your car, warranty for life on your vehicle. We're going to provide the first year of service for you. The purchase of a new vehicle, we got some specials right now. We're on the 2014 Nissan Altima 2.5, $17,995. We also got the Frontier King Cab, $17,635. And on the 14 Versa, they're priced like the pre-owns. We got specials on them, $10,995 right now.
What kind of service packages you guys have?
As far as for your service with your first year of maintenance, we're going to provide that for you. It's for first 2 oil changes. Tires are going to be covered for your first year. Your first tire rotation is going to be covered with us.
Man, I see, Terrence, you got a Nissan, and I've been talking to him, I've been checking the Nissan out. I'm going to check one out, man. I mean, looking for a pickup truck anyhow, you know, so it looks like you got some nice one out here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got some deals.
Really good deals. Now, one of the things about the Premier dealerships as a whole, including Premier Nissan and our good friend Troy Duhan, is the fact that they're involved in this community in a huge way. And one of those primary ways is to feed the hungry. Hope, the Premier Way, was founded by Troy and Tracy Duhan to promote hope, which is helping other people every day, in a variety of ways, locally, nationally, internationally. Hope, the Premier Way, strives to serve an underserved population, including the homeless, the elderly, the orphan, the widowed, the hungry, the thirsty, and the ever-growing number of underprivileged children in our world. And that's one of the beautiful things as Troy Duhan cuts the ribbon, feeding the hungry, and obviously, Byron, that's one of the big tenets of the Premier dealerships as a whole.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We're definitely involved in the community. Hope for Hunger, we've got the Hunger Hustle every year, so yeah, we're definitely in the community.
Yeah, plugged in a big way, and it doesn't get any better than what Troy's opted to get involved with here in this community. His faith plays a large role in the things that he does, and of course we're a faith-based station as well. And again, easy place to access, all kinds of deals going. What kind of interest rates we're talking about right now?
Got as low as 0%.
Oh my, hello. Ricky's ready, you got him. I think you just hooked him. Byron, thank you for having us here today too, we really appreciate it.
I need to come
It's
talk.
Byron Lopez. Torrance trying to make a deal now. I better sign off before we sell every vehicle in the place. For Torrance, for Ricky, for Brian, for Byron, I'm Ken. God bless you one and all. Rounding third and heading home. So long.